Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Hey everybody, let's welcome Nadine Vogel. Nadine is the CEO of Springboard Global Enterprises, which houses several companies. That includes Disability Mama, the WIP Group, the Springboard Foundation, which is an affiliated charity, and Springboard Consulting. Springboard Consulting was the first for-profit group to work with corporations to mainstream people with disabilities as candidates, employees, or customers. Nadine was a corporate executive when she created a company division that helps special needs family plan for the future. This new idea was important to Nadine because her oldest daughter had significant disabilities. Her boss said, Nadine, why don't you start your own company? So she did. Her boss became one of her first clients and was also on her advisory board. Her family and friends thought she was insane and was having a midlife crisis when she started her company because they knew she was so wanted to be in the corporate world. However, she felt the idea had merit and she trusted her instincts. Now she's a huge success. Best of all, her daughter, who was the inspiration for Springboard Consulting, has now started her own company for disabled artists. This is a full circle moment. Let's welcome Nadine Vogel. Good morning, Nadine.
Good morning, Sandi.
Today I'm speaking to Nadine Vogel. How did we meet?
We met, oh my gosh, years ago through Count Me In.
Oh my goodness. That's
I think you were there when I did my little pitch thing in New Jersey. And
yes,
that was a really long
because
time ago.
I started in Count Me In, I think from 2005 or 6.
And I started, I think, 2007.
Okay. So we were right behind each other. And yeah. Count Me In, for listeners who don't know, Count Me In for Women's Economic Independence was started by Nell Merlino, who did Take Your Daughters to Work Day. And Nell formed this organization to help business owners to get to the $1 million level. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to say she was very successful at that because quite a lot of the Count Me In women have reached the $1 million level and above.
Absolutely.
Very grateful.
You're a perfect example of that, Sandi. Way above.
I am one of the good examples, I have to say. Peggy and I really utilized every single thing we learned in that program. And this is part of why I'm doing this podcast, is just to have people come on and share what they've learned, not just in their businesses, but in life. And a lot of it starts out with being the first to do something.
Yes.
And we pave the way. And a lot of times it's not acknowledged, especially as women.
Yep.
And this is a place where I want that to be acknowledged.
Absolutely. I agree.
Okay. So what is it? Tell us, what is it that you're doing that you're the first of, Nadine?
Oh my goodness. So my company is called Springboard Global Enterprises, and the main, it's made up of a number of different companies, but the main company within that is Springboard Consulting. Springboard Consulting has been and still is the first of its kind in terms of we work with corporations around the world to mainstream people with disabilities, either as candidates, employees, and or customers. We're not an advocacy agency. We're not a nonprofit. We are a for-profit corporation working with for-profit corporations.
What made you start Springboard? How did this come about?
So I have adult daughters with disabilities. My oldest is 30 and has significant disabilities. I was in corporate at the time as a corporate executive. And in that role, actually created a division that helped special needs families plan for the future, a first of its kind there. And
Was that because of your child, or were you doing that before you had your child?
No, that division was started as a result of having my child. And my CEO challenged me one day and wanted to know why I created this division for the company and why I didn't start my own company. And that got me thinking. And 2 years later, I went to his retirement party on a Monday night, and I turned in my resignation on Tuesday, and I started Springboard on Wednesday.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you never know who's going to say something or do something that's going to impact your life, right? In such an incredible way, whether you're on the receiving end or the person making the comment, you never know.
Did he regret it?
No, he actually, because I waited till he retired to leave, he became CEO of another major financial services company, and they became one of my first clients. So now, and then he was on my advisory board. So he helped me tremendously.
Most women, I think, start off their businesses exactly that way.
Mm-hmm.
They have a particular skill,
right,
and they run with it. Mm-hmm. Even if they know nothing about business,
right,
they learn the business side.
Right.
So Nadine, you had such support from your old boss. Mm-hmm. Did you get support from anyone else? Were people happy that you started this business?
No.
You're shaking your head like no.
No, I'm shaking my head no as I think about it. No. No. So I had been with so I'll start with the corporate side. So I'd been with that company for 19 years. They thought I lost my mind. They told me I was working too hard. My boss offered to send me to a spa. They thought I was having a midlife crisis. They said it was like giving up my right arm. I mean, it actually was insane. The response and the reaction to on that side. And then my family, I would say pretty much the same, because they knew my goal had always been to be, corporate executive, CEO of a big company. And they just pretty much all thought I was having a midlife crisis. And that I just needed to probably think about it a little bit.
Is that their fear for you that you wouldn't be successful? Like, what was it that made them feel like?
I think it depended on who it was, right? So I think some were worried that I was just I wasn't going to be successful, right? That it was a great idea and I had all this passion and energy, but at the end of the day, are you kidding me? A business like that, just they couldn't fathom it could be really that successful. I think others were worried that I was going to do it and then regret it because, oh my God, I always wanted to be in corporate. How could I have left corporate and done this after I worked so hard to build this career? That, so I think there was a myriad of concern. Now, of course, looking back, 16 plus years later, it's like, oh yeah, that's amazing.
But you didn't let that stop you. I mean,
no.
What about your spouse or the person in your life at the time? Were they concerned too that you were quitting?
Yeah. My husband always supported me on anything and everything, right? I remember one of his comments was, you do realize that that direct deposit is going to stop when you leave. Because the other thing is you get to a certain level in corporate that it's, yes, it's the salary, but you have all the perks. You're traveling business class, the car service, just, the materialistic things. Yes. I think one of the learnings I had almost immediately was how materialistic actually I really became, not even realizing it, to tell you the truth. Because then I started my own company and what do you mean I have to drive to the airport and park in self-parking and walk 4 miles to the terminal? So, right.
I know.
All of that. It was interesting. It was an interesting time, but my personality was that the more people expressed concern and said I shouldn't and I should, the more it fueled my fire to just do it.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of women would just say, this is a crazy thing. And I've met women who said, I'm so sorry I listened to my family. And
right.
didn't try, at least try, right? So what spurred you? What inner thing did you have that spurred you on?
Um, I, I think it's that I had the experience in corporate where I had an idea and I created this dedicated division and it never existed in the industry before. And we had people in the company telling me, no, it's stupid, don't do it. And then it became one of the most profitable divisions in their entire corporation, right? So I think because I had that, even though that was in a corporate environment and and a lot of people said that, but Nadine, that's corporate. You had all this support,
Money and you had,
people,
yes.
right? Now it's just you. But somehow that was still in the back of my mind that, well, but I could do that. And I was the first to go to college and the first woman to go to grad school in my family and things like that. So I don't know, it was one of those things where I don't know how. And I'll add something else to that. So my older daughter I mentioned has significant disabilities, and they said that she wouldn't live, and if she did, she'd be in an institution, all these things. And she was still little. Well, let's see. When I went out on my own, I guess she was probably more like a teenager. She was probably about 13 or 12. But I made decisions that the doctors didn't agree with, and she's doing amazing. So I think it was even that. Like, you know what? I have to trust my instincts and go with it. Right? What's the worst that would happen? It wouldn't work, and I'll go back to corporate. Right. I mean, the truth was, it wasn't like if it failed, I was going to die. I mean, it wasn't.
That's so funny. Peggy and I said the same thing.
Really?
So our reasons for leaving is just very similar to yours. And the conversations we had with ourselves were very similar to yours. I wonder how many women did that. Because like you, we were in corporate. Right. We started a new division of a company, which was recurring billing, which today is so common, is the ability to pay your bills with a credit card, right? And same thing, nobody's done this. Who wants to pay their bills with a credit card, right? And to automatically pay it every month. And once we did that, like building the infrastructure, building everything from scratch. Once we did that, it was like it's like, well, we could do pretty much whatever we want to. And then 9/11 happened, and we decided to start our own business. We heard the same things that you had, and we had the same conversations that you had. My mother, are you crazy?
Yeah.
How hard did you work? And like you, I was already in corporate like 17 years, right?
Yeah.
And with all the same perks of having a driver and the miles that I accrued on my card.
Oh, yeah.
Took me on vacations.
Oh, yeah.
These little things. But I have to say, it's a wake-up call when you leave. And then you grow your business and you get used to it again.
Yes.
And then it's a wake-up call when you sell your business and it's gone.
Okay, I haven't gotten there yet. So you're ahead of me on that one, right? So I've been following you all the way. So that's coming.
All of a sudden, I just did this talk for the WPO on selling your business.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the women said, first, they wanted the points belong to the company. They tried to tell me the points belong to the company. Right. I realized my car was through the company. All my credit cards were through the company.
Yep.
And
then exactly.
It was like all gone. And you're like, what am I going to write off?
Right. You have to start all over again. It's crazy. But you know what? What's interesting is, I mean, you and Peggy were so incredibly successful. You had this amazing business. You sold it, but there's still a need to do more, right? Because you could just be sitting on the beach right now.
I'm not a beach girl.
Okay.
I love the beach. I love the beach. I really wouldn't be sitting anywhere but behind a computer.
Right. See, that's it. It's like you're ready to do the next thing, the next first thing, right? So, because I don't think there's a podcast that exists like this.
I've not seen one,
There you
and
go. You're
I
first.
am really going to push it a little further. I've just been trying to get women on, but there are podcasts that are sponsored by corporations. I think I'm
Yeah.
going to work a little harder next year to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone says this. We've not done a podcast about being the first. So
Yeah, it's very cool.
the next.
No, I think it's very, very cool. We have a podcast now called Disabled Lives Matter, and it's also it's talking to people with that are impacted in some way, shape, or form by disability, and showing how their lives really do matter, and in
Yeah.
everything that they do. It's cool. It's
Oh,
cool. We had the first TV program on Bloomberg called Inclusion at Work, the first business program about disability.
is it still going?
Yeah, we're actually in hiatus right now, but it ended up so successful that we ended up adding two other shows, two other business programs on RBN TV called the Nosh and the Nosh and Talking Tea with G and Me. And what's really interesting about the Talking Tea is my co-host is my 30-year-old daughter who has disabilities.
Oh, very nice.
Really
I
cool.
can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
Actually, I should talk to you about the shows, doing the TV shows and
Yeah,
how.
you should turn this into a TV program.
Yeah. So Nadine, what are some of the joys we just talked? What are some of the things that, when you're the first, that's just joyful to you about that?
One, you can just make it up as you go. Nobody can say, no, that's not the way to do it.
True.
So yeah, you kind of make it up. It just gives you this incredible amount of autonomy, right? Because you really it's like, I'll go to sleep one night and dream some idea, and the next morning I'm talking to my team about, hey, let's make it happen, right? So it's so cool.
And
Right?
then they're thinking, here goes the crazy woman again.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole nother, yes. So exactly. My ops person and I were like Lucy and Ethel. For those who are old enough to remember, I love Lucy. Anytime I say I've got an idea, she runs for the hills. So, but part of it is the joy about being first. So there's pressure within, there's downsides to it, but the positive is that it just lets me create. It lets me be creative. It lets me come up with things and do things that I'm so personally passionate about and care about, right? Because there's nobody ahead to say, oh, that won't work, or that can't work, or you shouldn't do that. We just go with it. It's great.
And if it doesn't work, you call it a learning.
That's right. Exactly. Never a problem, never a failure. It's just a learning.
Absolutely. We tried it. It didn't work the way we thought it would. Either I go, let's tweak it.
Right.
And try it again. And I might tweak it several times and it still doesn't work, but it's not failing.
Well, and I love what you said, though. It didn't work the way we thought it would, as opposed to it failed.
Yes.
I love that you said that.
Yes. And we took that mantra every time we went into a new industry or a new company.
Right.
We always say no is never no.
Absolutely. It's just till later.
Not right now. It's not right now. Or we were ahead of our time going in there, or we were too late going in there. But it's not a no.
Right. Well, I was definitely, not only was I the first with Springboard, but I was definitely ahead of my time. Because in those days, nobody was talking disability. You went to a diversity event, diversity conference, and I would go to the organizer and say, I'd love to do a session around disability. They looked at me like I had four heads. They're like, this is a diversity conference. Why would we be talking disability or a tech conference or any of those, industries? So from that standpoint, it was a first, but definitely ahead of my time. Today, any place you go, disability is on the agenda. And I feel really, that's the other piece that makes me really happy about being first, because I feel like I contributed to that. I contributed in some small way to changing society in this way. And it's very rewarding.
There was a woman who had a company when we first started out in New York. And she was trying to get the government to put, those slits in the sidewalk,
Yes,
like
yes.
so that a wheelchair could get
Yeah,
off the
the
curb,
ramps. Curb cuts.
curb cuts. She
hmm
was doing that was her main purpose
Wow.
because she had she didn't have the disability. Someone in her family was deaf and someone was in a wheelchair. And she
Okay.
was pointing out all these things to me that I took for granted.
Right, right.
Like
But
I
it's
never thought about a curb cut.
well, but here's what's interesting. You probably did, but didn't think of it as a curb cut. When you were walking with a suitcase and you're dragging the suitcase and you have to kind of lift it up over the curb, you probably wished, God, I wish there was an easier way to do this and not realized it.
Nadine, I'm not sure I even thought about it because it was just so second nature
Yeah,
because I can lift it up, right? And
right.
I can, so I just used to turn it backwards and slide it
Yeah.
down first. But I never thought about what if
Uh,
someone who couldn't pick it up or
yes.
couldn't walk to get off of there.
Yeah.
And I used to see people lifting up wheelchairs to go up steps.
Yes. Yes.
And then there was a ramp,
Yes.
right? And now we take those things for granted.
Right. But it also speaks to the issue of universal design, right? So those curb cuts benefit so many people beyond the
Yes,
people who initially needed them with you use wheelchairs, right? Think of a mom with a stroller or a dad with pushing a baby stroller,
right.
or the heavy suitcases or anything. It's so much easier.
It is. And there after that, I just noticed a ton of things.
Yeah. There's no roadmap. There's no, oh, let me see what they did and what they learned, or, there's just nothing. Now, what's interesting is, even though I was the first relative to this type of business, what I did learn is that I wasn't the first relative to women starting businesses, women running businesses, right?
Correct.
So I developed it, and I know you've talked about this a lot, like an advisory board. I called it my dream team of
Yes.
people who did have experiences that I didn't. There was no one on disability, but just at least I figured, okay, so if I have to learn disability, at least they can help me with the other issues.
Correct.
Because there isn't a roadmap. Even when my daughter was born, she has an undiagnosed neuromuscular disorder. She spent 3 months in intensive care and home nursing. And, it wasn't like she had a diagnosis of Down syndrome. She had a diagnosis of autism, right? And even that, there's lots and lots of differences within that.
Right.
But nobody knew what she had. So it was trial and error. She was the first person in our family to have a disability. So it wasn't like I could go to family members, right? So, there's those challenges. And when you don't have a roadmap, you really, really have to have confidence in your decision making and your intuition and trusting your
Yes.
intuition, because otherwise you become, paralyzed, not literally, but, figuratively, because you're so afraid of making the wrong decision
Right.
that you make no decision, which is a decision in and of itself. So that's the downside of it, I think.
Yeah, I heard that too, because when you don't have someone or something to follow, even when you create a business plan, you kind of look at other industries and other business plans to go,
Right.
but you have nothing to go by.
No, and for me, for disability, the only thing that existed were nonprofit, organizations or support groups, and that wasn't at all what we were doing.
That is
We were
true.
doing we were doing this with corporate, and it was just interesting. There was nothing, and I was the first person in my family to ever start a business, so I didn't have anybody in the family that could give any guidance.
Right.
So yeah, it was from that standpoint, it was challenging, and I really had to learn to trust my intuition. That was probably one of the biggest challenges.
And how often do you think you were right?
I
Had
would
to be a good
say I was
percentage.
right. I think I was probably right 85% of the time. I would say most of the time. And with the things that I wasn't right, I wouldn't necessarily say they were wrong. It was wrong, but there were better options. There were better ways to approach it. It wasn't a right or wrong, but more of a better way. And that's where my dream team kind of came in to really help.
Yes, I'm such an advocate for advisory boards.
Oh yeah, everybody should have one.
I believe that. I truly believe that. And when I say that to people, I've been collecting responses, right? And I hear everything from, I don't want other people in my business. I don't want people telling me what to do. I'm like, that's not what an advisory board is.
Right.
But it's our own fear, I guess, as women, as new entrepreneurs,
Right.
even people with older businesses, 10, 15, 20 years, don't have a board. And I hear that from them. Oh, I'd rather run it and not have someone come in and tell me what to do.
Mm.
And I'm like, but you're in groups that you're bringing your issues to.
Right. Well, I look at it as, so when I was in corporate, I had advice, I was an executive, so I had advisors to me, even in corporate. I had my counsel, right? My corporate counsel. I had the financial person. They didn't tell me how to run the business, but they gave me their opinions based on their experience, their skills, so that I could make a better business decision.
Yes.
Right? That's really all it was. And that's how I look at an advisory board. It's not telling you what to do. It's giving you information that you otherwise wouldn't have access to help you decide what you want to, make a decision, but you might change it. You might based on that information.
That's a great way to put it. And you don't have to take the advice.
Right. You don't for sure.
When people give you advice, you have to say, this is the little piece that matches my business, or none of it.
Right.
Thank you for that, but none of that is really in the lane that I want to drive.
Well, and I think also where you are in your business determines who you need on the advisory board.
Correct.
Right. If you're just starting and you don't have any other role models or whatever, you need different folks on that advisory board than, like, for instance, if today, Sandi, you and Peggy went and started a whole other company, you'd probably have an advisory board, but your needs would be very different at this point than it was before.
Yes. It's an organic thing. I keep saying to people, an advisory board is not static.
Right.
It's ever changing.
Absolutely.
People come in, people go.
Yep.
It's not, you're not expecting to have the same person at the beginning all the way to the end. We did have a couple of people who were just overall like your CFO, that's going to be constant. But no, we went through advisory board members.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I remember when I got to a point that we had a meeting with our advisory board with the dream team, and collectively they said, Nadine, we think you've outgrown us. We think you need a different team. Like we've gone as far as we can go in the types of advice you need. Right. Like now you need to go. And I was devastated. I was like, are you firing me? I was like, why are you leaving me? Oh my God. I really took
good advisory board, right? That's a good working advisory board.
Yes.
To recognize that they're not really advancing you.
Yes.
And that they're not giving you what you need.
Right. But I was devastated. I was like, I took it so personally. I mean, I finally got it to because I got what you were just saying, but it took me a little while. I was like, why don't you want to help me anymore? Yes. But what was happening was, when I look back, it was over a series of maybe 6 to 9 months where what I was bringing to them that I wanted guidance on or questions I had, they were like, yeah, I haven't had that experience, or I don't know, or, it's just, and so they were right to do what they did, but it was hard.
I know. It's even harder letting someone go who doesn't want to go.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yes, that's worse, I think.
But how are you sharing all this knowledge now, Nadine?
So any opportunities that I have, I mentor. I mean, I can mentor anyone, but mostly I focus on women. I've done because Harvard has done a couple of case studies, published some case studies on my work and my business. I've had an opportunity to mentor women, both at the Harvard Kennedy School and at the business school, which has been really cool.
Nice.
Um, through the Kennedy School, it's been career women. Through the business school, it's been grad students, MBA students. I've done that at the College of Charleston, where I graduated from. I was what's it called, Mentium mentor
Yeah.
at one point, and then a few years ago, I started under that Springboard Global Enterprise umbrella a company called the WIP Group, which is Women Influence and Power. And through that, we also do a lot of mentoring with women.
That is so important. It's important to me because I know there was a point, even in corporate, that I didn't have a mentor.
Oh, yes, me too.
And you used your friends who knew just as little as you did.
Exactly. It's very, very true. Yep.
And then there were women who just didn't want to help other women.
Unfortunately, there's still a lot of that going around, and that's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Yes.
That's just wrong. There's no even potential right there. It's just wrong.
The reason is they like to be the only one of that kind, and so they become the go-to person.
Yes.
They become the famous person.
Yep.
The person who's always on TV, and they're afraid of losing that status.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a component there of insecurity.
Yes. And, I've always learned to pull other women behind me.
Absolutely.
I've been doing that my whole life.
I say pull them behind me, pull them with me. And you know what? Sometimes you have opportunities to pull them in front of you, and that's okay.
Yes. So you mentioned your daughter. How are you seeing the impact on her and on the next generation? How's, all this first stuff that you're doing?
Yeah.
Is she doing some firsts as well?
Yes. So I have two daughters. One's 30 and one's 22. So my 22-year-old, actually, it's funny. She, I know patience is a virtue. I don't have it. So I recognize it's a virtue. But she graduated college, got her first full-time job. She's in Manhattan. She's working for a big music label. And, she's into the job, I don't know, maybe 2.5 months, and is frustrated that she can't do all these things, that she has skill sets that she's developed from her internships. Like, she wants to go in and be CEO tomorrow. And, I'm trying to teach her patience, but it's so funny because I have none. And so I see what she's learned, good and bad, from me, right? But she wants to be the first that does this and the first that, so I see it. While she was waiting, while she was having challenges getting a job, she graduated early, and with COVID and everything, she was having challenges. So she started her own music consulting business. And I thought, oh my gosh, right? So it was like interesting seeing that. She's creating her logo and she's like doing all this stuff. And I thought, that's my daughter.
But what is she doing as a music consultant?
Well, so now it's somewhat more dormant because she did get the full-time position, but she blogs about up and coming talent and people to watch for, and she'll interview them and she'll provide guidance, especially for the up and coming talent. They're not ready for a manager, they can't afford a manager, so she'll provide guidance to them, building their site, doing things like that.
Oh my God, I might have a couple of people to send to her. Send me information.
I will. She's her company is called ARM, ARMM. It's artist, music, repertoire, and something. I can't remember. I'll get it to you.
Yeah.
But so she's done that. And then my older daughter, my 30-year-old Gretchen, she works for Springboard. After she graduated college, she did some interning at different companies and came here. And, one of the things when you have a child with a disability, especially a significant disability, you want to teach them to be self-advocates. and really learn how to be out there and do things. And yes, maybe you are the first person with a disability that does this, and maybe you are the first person with a disability, and she has become an advocate of advocates, and she has proven to do that really, really well. And it's amazing to watch.
That I can't even imagine the courage that takes, especially as the first person with a disability,
Right,
to go
right,
out and put yourself out there.
right.
Because honestly, I remember as kids can be mean,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Kids can be very mean, especially the people
So
with
can adults, by the way.
that is true. That is
The bullies grow up.
that is true. And I remember even how some kids used to treat other kids with disabilities, and maybe myself too. Maybe I've said stuff that, as an older person, I'm like, why do you do that? But as a kid, you hear other kids do it. So I could
Right,
imagine
right.
for her to step out
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
put herself out there as the first. She learned it from you.
But it's difficult. Like I said, the bullies grow up. I mean, she's, periodically I've said, why don't you explore other roles outside the company? And it's amazing how, in light of what we do, there's still so much discrimination around the employment of people with disabilities. It really
Yes,
is.
yes, there is. And I've seen that. Peggy and I are doing this unconscious bias talk. And it's not just a color thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a size, you
Mm-hmm.
know, women and their size or men and their size
Mm-hmm.
get these preconceived ideas about them.
Yes.
And same thing with disability.
Yep.
They can't. It always starts with they can't.
Right. Right. And the thing is with unconscious bias, I think that there's a lot of bias that's conscious. I think people don't recognize it in themselves. They don't realize that they're not trying to be mean, but just maybe the way they grew up or they didn't have a certain
Correct.
experience before. So in order to change behavior, we need to get them to recognize their biases.
And that's a big part of what we're trying to do now is just first understand where it came from.
Right. Right.
Because we don't understand what the word bias means. We
No,
don't understand how we grew up, formed us, a lot of people,
exactly.
good and bad.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And once you recognize that, oh, I used to hear my parents say that all the time.
Right.
So no, I never experienced it, but automatically I think that way,
Right. Right. Absolutely.
ingrained.
Yep.
And yeah, I could definitely see how disabilities have a challenging thing to do. There was this woman who was doing clothing for the
Mm-hmm.
disabled. And I didn't realize because a lot of times they're sitting down in a wheelchair. Your clothes need to be made differently.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Who would have thunk that? Unless I was in that position or like you working with someone disabled, I would just buy them a dress that I think is comfortable,
Right.
probably not very stylish, but
Right.
comfortable. Until I saw her, I'm like, yes, go girl.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've been on the board of it. I was on the board of the foundation that's all we did was around accessible clothing. Yep. It's adaptive, fashion is really important. But like you said, unless you've experienced it personally in some way, how would you know?
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that are going on in the disabled world? What's the newest that we're
There's always exciting things happening. So just recently, EEOC has said that long haul COVID is now a protected class under the ADA, which is really interesting. Because what defines long haul COVID, and it doesn't mean that everyone that has long haul COVID, can get an accommodation. It's really how it manifests itself, and then how it impacts in the workplace. but it is now a protected class. So companies are just kind of struggling with that. As a result of COVID, we have seen the unbelievable escalation of people talking about having anxiety and depression. And, that's the ultimate invisible disability, because mental health issues are thoughts and feelings. We don't see thoughts and feelings.
And we don't think people are sick because we can't see it.
No, absolutely. Well, even our healthcare system treats physical disability and mental disability very differently. Yes. And that has to change. I mean, that's really where it has to start.
Because it's just hard to wrap your head around, because you can't see it. Someone's walking around looking lovely, in a physically good health, right? And then they do something or say something, and it's very easy to say, oh, they're mean or they're whatever. And you never really think maybe that's because of a mental health issue.
Right. No,
whether
absolutely.
PTSD or, other things that are unseen. We never go to the backstory of why is that happening.
Absolutely. And it's, if someone says that they just got out of the hospital and had a heart attack, oh my gosh, can I bring over food? What can I do for you? Someone says they just got out of the hospital, they had some kind of nervous breakdowns, like, you run, right? Oh, okay.
You don't know what to do.
Exactly. So we do a lot of training around this, and how to recognize the signs, how to react, how to respond, the right language. It's not, someone committed suicide, but rather they died by suicide, because no one intends to harm themselves, right? No one intends to do something like that. So this is a lot that we're doing there. And then just, with people coming back to the workplace, it's been interesting. I'll just give you one example. So I was facilitating a session for a client last week, and we had some folks who were deaf. And they said that they're having anxiety about coming back to the office, because working remotely with Zoom, you have captioning, right? You can just turn captioning on. And so now it's so easy for them to communicate. They said they're going to go back to the office, and it's going to be really difficult for them to communicate again.
Oh.
And the company leaders were like, really? Like, never in a million years thought about that. Or if it's a company where folks are still wearing masks and we have people that read lips, well, there are masks that are clear around the mouth, right? But not thinking about that. So we're spending a lot of time with that right now as well.
I hadn't even thought of that. Truthfully.
Yes. And we just, and then the newest, here, I'll give you my latest first. This will be perfect. I'll announce it here. My latest first. So we have just started a new global division of the company, and it's focused on menopause as a disability. And
my goodness.
And understanding what that means. So in the US, it is not a disability protected under the ADA, but there are countries like the UK, like Wales, where it is actually legally a protected disability class.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that the women in the US are having different experiences, less, symptoms. So we have a whole global offering. We've already started, and we're doing training and listening sessions and toolkits and all kinds of things for companies around this. So
you need some guinea pigs? I can get you quite a lot.
Oh, I know. So this was a marriage of Springboard Consulting on the disability side and the WIP group serving women coming together and looking at this. And there is no other company that has a dedicated division doing this now. So we are the first.
There is someone I know who is creating a cooling device for a menopausal woman.
Oh, tell her to call me.
Makes it as jewelry.
I love it.
Like nice jewelry like this. And when you wear it, as your body temperature rises, it kicks in and cools you down.
Okay, I need the earrings, the necklace, the bracelets, the belts, any and everything she has. Just tell her to send it on over. I need prototypes, anything.
I will. I'm not kidding you. She's going for funding, like rounds of funding. But what if this is part of a disability class you know,
Tell her to call me.
I guess your
Absolutely.
insurance can now pay for this.
And yes, and there's another product that we're actually separate, another company I have that we're working on that aligns with what she's doing. So I would love to talk with her.
When we're done, I'll email you,
Absolutely.
introduce you both.
Absolutely. See? That's what this is all about.
Oh, this is great. So,
Yeah.
I know you've inspired your daughters. Who inspired you first? Did you see a woman or someone who had a business and said, I'd like to do that?
My inspiration on so many levels was my grandmother.
It's
So
always the grandmothers.
it's always the grandmothers, I know. She worked full time, raised two daughters, went to business school to become a bookkeeper, had this career when, women in her day didn't do that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, when was she born? She was born in it was like 19, I don't know, 16, 19, women just didn't do that. And always my inspiration. I would, for many years, we lived close by, and, she'd come home on a Friday after working a full week, and the whole family would descend on her dining room table on Friday night, and we'd all be together for dinner, and she would cook dinner. It was like she could do it all, it was,
Yes.
and so that was truly an inspiration for me, and never complained, just did it. It was amazing to me, and always was dressed impeccably, and yeah, so she was certainly my inspiration.
I have to say that do it all always is the grandmothers. I've seen my mom do it too, but somehow seeing my grandmother do all the different multitasking things
Yeah, yeah.
impressed me more than my mom doing it. I don't know
Well,
why.
because that was at a time when, I mean, who did that stuff, So they were first in their own right, and that's inspirational.
You know what my grandmother gave me? She always said to me that when you have your own business, like no one can fire you
Right?
unless you fire
Absolutely.
yourself. Like
Right.
as long as, and she called it turning your hand, as long
Mm-hmm.
as you could turn your hand to do things,
Right.
you should always have an income.
Absolutely. And I had a boss many years ago, not a woman, but he was crazy. But one of the things he said that always stuck with me, similarly, is that if you do that which others can't do, won't do, or don't know how to do, you'll always be successful.
And you'll always be the first.
Exactly. Exactly. And I've
You,
I've run with that mantra.
I've watched the Elon Musks of the world who are going into new areas, right? Or even let's say space is not new anymore,
Well, yeah.
but they're making it so that the human being, the individual,
Hmm.
can take a trip.
Right.
Instead of going to astronaut school for 1,000 years,
Yep.
you can just buy a trip to go up into space and to feel gravity. And those are big firsts.
No, those are huge.
This stuff we're doing and we're doesn't it, you can't compare it
No.
because those are industry changing,
Oh yeah. Life changing.
life changing things,
Yeah.
world
Absolutely.
changing,
Yep.
world
Absolutely.
changing. Because now I was I was walking in the supermarket and someone in front of me was saying, imagine one day we could live on the moon.
Yep.
And before that was like, who's going to go live on the moon? Why are we going up to the moon? Why are we trying this?
Right. It wasn't that long ago that JFK was just trying to convince everyone we should go to the moon.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And now it's almost taken for granted. Since William Shatner, the guru of Star Trek
That was just so cool.
at 90,
I know.
then it's like, who
I
cares?
just wish he was going up there with Leonard Nimoy. I wish the two
Yeah.
of them were together. That would have been like, it was cool that Captain Kirk was going, but I really would have liked them together.
I know that would have been really, really nice.
Yeah.
But just the thought of having your Star Trek come to life
Yeah, absolutely.
is amazing. So, we're talking about all these firsts, and you alluded to it that it made you bolder in trying new things.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the new things that you've tried? As I think you mentioned one or
Well,
two.
yeah. I mean, I've, now I have an idea, and if it's about creating a new business, I don't even think twice. I just do it.
Because you got whip top whip.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and how that came about, funny enough, it was really the subject of the work I was doing with Harvard, with the Harvard Kennedy School, and a lot of the women that I was working with just started following up and asking me questions, and can I do this and do that, and so it kind of just came about. Or the new global division around menopause. So it's made me more confident, I think I would say, and I believe you can't have confidence without competence. So I believe that over the years I've built the competence, which now allows me to be more confident in doing other firsts and not second guessing myself so much, just going for it. And so now I don't know, I probably have, it might even be 6 businesses now for different things. I mean, Springboard is still my main, but we have a lot of different businesses now, and whether they stick or they don't stick, I don't get upset about it, right?
Are they all on the Springboard, or are they individual and separate?
No. So I think there's 4 of them under Springboard, and then the rest are just individual. They have like just nothing to do with disability or any of this, and it's very cool.
It is.
Cool.
I'm trying to do the same thing you're doing, Nadine. Get an idea and just flushing it out and
run with it. What's the worst that'll happen?
I was speaking to this man that I was thinking of having him coach me, because I've always been coached by women, and I thought, oh, I'd like a male perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I started telling him, all the different skill sets I've acquired over the years and all the different things I'd like to do. And he said, you're doing too much.
Okay.
Right away, I was, I start shutting down, right? Because what do you mean I'm doing too much? Oh, you need to form a brand around one thing. Now, I did marketing, so
right, exactly.
You have to form a brand around one thing. And when I go out there, okay, you say you're doing advisory boards, but when I go out there, I see you doing this, and I see you doing coaching, and I see, and because I can.
Right, exactly. Not one thing.
And I'm good at it.
Right.
So why are you telling me to kind of stay in my lane if I'm doing that?
Well, you're like a freeway. You have multiple lanes. The freeway of Sandi. I like that.
Needless to say, he's not my coach.
Yeah.
And this is where you have to not buy into someone else's perception of what you could do or what you can't do.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it was because it was a man.
Yeah.
There might be women coaches who would have done that, but I've not had that from a woman coach.
Right.
And it's just maybe I should get a different perspective on coaching. And I'm like, I don't need a different perspective. Not that perspective anyway.
Right. Certainly.
So, Nadine, we could go on and on and on. But I'm so thankful and grateful for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
This side, you've given me a lot to think about in disabilities. It's a whole new space. Actually, my brain is already churning about all the things that I think could happen. I saw one of these bottle openers.
Yes.
I couldn't use it worth a darn. Like it's you needed two hands to clamp it.
Yep, I've seen those. They don't work. Not for me.
And I'm like, someone needs to develop a better bottle opener.
Yeah. Well, like we have clients that are actually we're working with them on what they call hackability, right? So can people with disabilities open their packaging? Can people with disabilities read their packaging? All of that. So it's really important.
Yeah,
and again, people aging, right? Just developing carpal tunnel, just kind of all things.
That's what made me get one of them, because I have carpal tunnel, and at certain point it's so painful to try to do this. And when I don't have the glove on, and I forget, and I try to, and I'm like, and so I bought one of them. The best one is a little cheap $1 grip.
Yes, those work really well. Yep, the rubber. Those work really well.
Yeah,
that's what I use.
With the grip, and you turn it, and it's open. But I thought the fancy schmancy one would be good, and I needed both hands. First of all, some people don't have two hands.
Right, exactly.
So maybe I'll email you about getting into the product business.
Let's do it. Why not? Let's do it. See? You never know. Stay tuned.
It'll be another first, Nadine. It'll be another.
That's right. It'll be a first because you and I will partner on it. We'll do it together.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yes. Well, thank you for all you do and for having this amazing podcast and for including me. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yes. No, you are more than welcome. And I'll let you know if you can come on another time on a different topic.
You got it.
All righty. This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.